Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Othello School District Board of Directors. We will begin today with a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome all our guests. Those of you that are here in the boardroom, thank you for being here. Those of you that are online, appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to watch us conduct our business tonight. I would like to motion the approval of this afternoon's agenda with a few changes. I would like to have item B3 become item B2, B4 become item B3, and B2 will become item B4. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I omitted one thing. Under board member discussion, there will be a discussion pertinent to the appointment of a new school board member. This will be my last meeting. I won't give my farewell statement till later in the meeting, but there will be a discussion during board member discussion. So let us know when we can refresh, Marissa.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Can we ask if we need an interpreter? 'Cause I know we have someone here for that.
Do we need translation for anyone this afternoon? Thank you for being here. Marissa's a pro. All right. At our first meeting in December every year is when we're supposed to have our annual reorganization elections. The election of a president, vice president, legislative rep, president pro temp, and a WIIA representative. We were not able to have the entire board here at the first meeting in December, thus we decided to push it to today. So, having said that, I will open the floor for a motion for the election of the next president, which will be a one-year term.
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Ken Johnson to this position.
Okay, there's been a motion for Director Ken Johnson for the president position. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? Or are there any other motions, excuse me?
Nominations?
Any other nominations? Not hearing any, we will need to make this a roll call vote for the nomination of Ken Johnson to President of the Othello School District Board of Directors for 2023. Director Stevenson.
Aye.
Prowse. Schutte.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. Having said that, congratulations, Director Ken Johnson. You are the new president. And per policy, I cede you the seat.
At this time, we'll have nominations for vice president.
I would like to nominate Lindsay Prowse.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Okay, a roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And aye.
Musical chairs today.
Then we will do election of legislative representative.
I would like to nominate Ken Johnson.
I will second that.
Okay. Is there any other nominations for the position? Okay, roll call vote again.
Aye.
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 An aye. Now we will have the election of the president pro temp.
I nominate Jen Stevenson.
I will second that. Is there any other nominations for the position? Okay, we will take the roll call vote now.
Aye.
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 An aye.
Lindsay, is your mic on, or is it just set for Ken's voice?
I'm understanding why we can never hear Ken. First of all, this thing has no give, so you can't pull it closer. And I think it's kind of low.
Okay, our next position is for the election of the WIAA representative. Do we have any nominations for that position?
I nominate Sharon Schutte.
I would like to second that. Do you know, we haven't like made sure that this person accepts. I mean, I assume someone with our group that we'd all say yes or no if that's a problem. But are you up for that?
I've done it before. I just
Okay.
wish there was a little more knowledge of what we're supposed to do with it.
We'll work on that
Okay.
this year. with you. So,
I've done reports, but only to myself.
okay.
So would it be good if we had that monthly in the board member discussions to have a WIAA report? Every meeting, once a month? What would be good? What would work?
Maybe you guys can let me know, because I would over to talk to Jenny, and then it was everything that she already had put out. I didn't want to repeat myself. And all of this, so
I think more information's better than less. And I don't always stay up on some things.
and I don't want to step on the kids, because they are at the high school, and they like to report sports also. But it's other things, so yes, that'd be fine. We'll work on it.
Monthly, weekly, every meeting
I think monthly's fine.
Monthly would be fine. And
at the first meeting? Now do we vote? Did we vote on her?
we need to vote on that now. So being a first and second and no other nominations, we'll take the roll call vote.
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
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 An aye. Okay, concluding that. Thank you, everybody. Next order of business is board member discussion. Jen, do you have a legislative report?
Really quick. Is this when we also do our student rep coordinator person? Liaison.
That is a very good point. It's not, I don't think it's in the DOP. So we need to add it to our policy, because it was under, that position was actually in our former policy that we don't follow
So-
anymore. So we need to add that.
So when we come across that DOP for student representatives, could we make sure we could get those changes in there?
Lindsay, you can even rewrite it and just add a line. Elise will help you.
She needs to be my mentor.
Okay. On
It goes
to
both ways, right?
legislative report.
I have no legislative report today.
Okay. Being no legislative report, we'll go on to discussion of appointment of a new board member. How do you guys feel about going out for, we could go out for advertisement for open position for a board member? This is an open position, so anybody within the district can sign up for this. We take applications for it. Have you got a timeline that you would like to work with?
So this is your last meeting, is that correct? By law, we have 90 days to appoint. So what if we put out for 1 month on social media, in the newspaper, all of the different avenues? And then we all speak also to anyone that may have ever expressed interest or that we think would be great. Mike, you can also do that. And
I've
since
done that.
good. Since it is at large, it can be anyone in district boundaries. So, and then we have a due date.
That's what my next question was. Do we want to put a cutoff date for accepting applications?
I would say the sooner the better. If we could be doing our interview like a month from now.
How about by the first meeting of the month of January?
Oh, that's I think that's pretty quick. So what if
3
we
weeks?
had a deadline of the 17th, and then we could possibly, before the meeting on the 23rd, do interviews?
We could do interviews on the same day as our meeting beforehand,
Right.
and then we can make the official appointment during that meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
So does do the 17th by 5 p.m. to the district office to Marissa? Someone just has to express interest?
Yes.
Are we having like fill out a resume, fill out a form?
Do
Lindsay,
we have
you're the
anything
last one
from
that
the
was appointed.
previous-
What-
Okay, we have, the district staff has that information from previous appointments that has been done, so we will follow that same procedure.
Great. 'Kay.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. Any more discussion for that? Okay, now we will move on to student recognition.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll kick it off. We're going to take today as an opportunity, and I hope that the board will participate in recognizing Elise for her service to the school district as a student rep. She has been a member of your team and a member of our team for a number of years now because of the experience that we all and the unusual circumstances surrounding COVID. And you all understand the challenges of coming to these meetings and staying engaged and trying to participate. Imagine trying to do that when you also have homework and a job and you're active on social media, as Elise is. It is a lot of time involved in sharing your perspective and your ideas about what students are dealing with. I just wanted to share a couple things that I've learned about Elise. I've known her since she was a little girl, and we were both together at Wahitas for a year or two. And there's a couple things that I recognized about her then that are consistent with who she is now. She was very opinionated. That's at the heart of who Elise is. And sometimes people offer opinion and this perspective that can be off-putting. Elise was never like that. I have a mentor who says, she calls herself Bossy Becky, and she says, I'm only bossy because I have better ideas. And then she backs them up. Elise backs up her ideas and her positions and her opinions as well, and so I appreciate that about her. I've also enjoyed the opportunities we've had to travel as a board and the commitment that she makes to the learning when she goes to those events, and balanced with her energy and interest outside of the events to engage with folks. A very mature way that she behaves when we go to those things, and so I know she's going to be able to connect with folks in college as she moves on and starts her life. The last thing that I just want to share, probably just directly to Elise, is I know that she puts a lot of pressure on herself, pressure to do things at a high level and to do a lot of things. But what I have noted in the last year is you acknowledge that, and I don't know how much you change it, but you talk about how you can talk to other people to help you think through that. Pressure is not always a bad thing, so don't run away from that. But I've been impressed in watching your level of self-awareness as you figure out who Elise is and who Elise is going to be. And so I'm proud that I've had the chance to work with you for the last couple of years.
So I would love to go next. When you were on the stage at WASDA, at this last annual conference, and you said, I've been on the board, I think it was like 3 years, 4 years, a long time. There were people in the audience behind us that said, oh, I didn't know anybody could be on that long. And I was like, yep, that's Elise. Only Elise can do that. Because we continually picked you time and time again, because you are just amazing. You did your job. You did it amazingly well, and we wanted to keep seeing you grow and do this amazing job. And I am always so proud to say that we have student reps, and thank you for helping us get to where we are with student reps, because so much of that was you. It was, I felt like a check the box position before you and as you got on, and that we have grown as a board with you and started to understand it's not a check the box position. This is an essential part of our board, and that you have helped us get there and to understand that, and I thank you for that.
Well, you're going to hear almost the same thing from all of us. I like the fact that even though the student rep position's been in before you, you've kind of modified it a bit to make it more relevant. You've brought the importance of it to our attention, certainly. And like Pete says, you've held your own at the events everywhere you've gone. You've represented Othello proud. Going back to being able to put stuff out and then back it up, I never even told you about this, and this is a great segue. This is an email I got from the school board president in Battleground. And I got this back on November 30th. It says, Mike, I had the privilege of sitting at the table with Elise at the student voice session at WASDA. Just wanted you to know that she demonstrated perfectly how valuable students on the school board can be. Her patience and specific practical examples in the face of strong skepticism stood out as a testimonial for the value of students on school boards. So not only are we noticing it, but others are noticing it as well. So kudos to you. You're going places. Pressure's good. Trust me. My shoulders, I don't know how they're feeling today, but anyway, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for what you've done for the Othello School District Board of Directors.
So Elise, your positivity is ongoing. The growth that you've done is just made us all open our own eyes. Enthusiasm that you had at WASDA, and every time you had one of your meetings, what your enthusiasm that you brought back to us, we were like, she's so bubbly with this. So, and I think what you're not afraid of is to help others. You've helped Gael, you helped Jaden, and I think that you'll be a great person to, if any new student rep needs a question, they can ask you. So good luck in your future. I know you got a lot going, and thank you.
Well, Elsie was on the school board when we first started. Remember that, Mike? For the first 2 years. Maybe not that long. But Elise, you started on the board as a freshman, and Sharon and I were also freshmen when we started. Like, we kind of all joined up together and have learned a lot. The three of us, as we've gone down the road, every WASDA conference that we've been to, whether on a state or national level, we've gotten recognition because of you. So when people say, oh, you're from Othello, they don't say, like, I know Othello because Ken Johnson has a glass business, or, Mike does insurance, he's my guy. No, it's always, you have a student rep. The student rep who has spoke to all of us is from Othello. That's your student rep. So you have put us on the map, and you have represented Othello incredibly well. I'm always inspired by your dedication to learning, to anything that you put your mind to, working, education, learning a musical talent, whatever it is that you decide to do, you do it. And that's such an admirable quality. And I know that Pete touched on, you're having a strong opinion. And I'm 38 years old, and you have more gumption than I do. So don't lose that. It's taken me such a long time to even try to find a voice, and you were just born with one. And that's such a gift, and I'm so proud of you for that. I know you're going to do great things, even if you're not going to be my lawyer like I had always thought you would be. I know that no matter what you choose to do in any facet of life, that you'll be successful, and I'm so incredibly proud of you. And thank you. thank you for the hours and the dedication that you've put into serving this board and to growing with us as a team and working through all of our kinks over the last 4 years as we've worked together. So thank you.
Elise, you have helped this board understand the value of why you got 4 years in, and we understand that value. And I hope in the future, we have some more student representatives that look at that in the future and look at what you have did and where you have gone with your role on the board. You have served this community proudly on the state level and in the national level. You have been our first student representative to represent us in a state role or classes that were given in San Diego, I believe. And we really appreciate that. And I know you got great things going for you in the future, and we wish you very well on that. And we hope that your time here has helped with that direction. Thank you very much. Any other comments from the? Okay, we will go on to student representative reports.
Well, thank you guys. I was just going to use my time during my report to thank you for the last 4 years that I've had on the board, and you guys are thanking me for doing all these things, but I have to thank you because being on the board is what gave me the opportunity to do all these things, and so yeah, thank you for that. And I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little update on where I'm going. So as of last night, I am going to Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Washington to study forensic psychology
Arizona.
in Arizona. What did I say?
Washington.
Yeah. Phoenix, Arizona. Definitely not Washington. It's too cold. But yeah, so I'm going to go study that. And I'm still working with Logan on the Student Rep Network. So I'll still be doing that work. And yeah, I'm still going to keep in contact with Gail to do good stuff for our district. So thank you.
Gael, you have it?
So last meeting, I was telling you guys about the conversation for a cookie, and you guys asked me for some dates, and I had a meeting with Ms. Atchison, and we decided for January. We had the 24th and the 26th. And earlier, Mr. Gonzalez came in, and I also asked him, and he said he would also be able to do 26th or 27th. So for January, we would have the 24th, 26th, and the 27th, which is Tuesday, Thursday, and a Friday, for whoever's available for that, and who can be there.
Okay.
The high school lunch is gonna last from like 11 to like 1-ish, for both lunches, and then for the middle school, it's from like 11 to 12:30. And I was also thinking we could include Mr. Peterson. It would be great to have him there. And also something that I was talking to Jen about was maybe like a way to include parents. So at the high school, there's like this like half circle, this little loop. And if maybe when parents are dropping off their kids from school, if we can have people out there and maybe even like just for like a minute, see if they have anything like to tell us. Be like, hey, maybe put up a sign, send out some announcements that we're going to be out there like that morning, and maybe they can come talk to us and give us feedback, questions, concerns, stuff like that.
Great. Thank you. So Marissa, if we could get you to send us out an email, a reminder of those dates, and then if any board members would like to attend, let her know so we could not keep it under the quorum.
Gail. No, I was just going to ask Gail, could you give us a time frame at all? Do you have any kind of a time frame for us?
11 to 1, 11 to 12:30 for the middle school, and the high school's 11 to 1.
You want us to respond by email and not right now? Ken?
If you want to, right now, yeah.
Which are the dates for Othello? Let's start with Othello High first. What was the date for that?
24 and 26. So that's a Tuesday and a Thursday.
And then what was the date for McFarland?
The 26th and the 27th. So Thursday and Friday.
I could do McFarland on the 27th. Did you say 26th? So if we did the 27th on that day,
Mm.
So can I. I can do the middle school on the 27th.
okay?
I think I can try the 24th,
And I could also do the 24th.
and that's at OHS from 11 to 1, right?
Okay, I thought OHS was 26 or 27.
No, that's
That was the middle school?
Yeah.
My bad.
And then you're still going to work on other campuses, the ideas for other campuses?
I'm gonna reach out and see what we can do with DOHS.
Perfect.
Okay, anything else further from the student representatives? Okay, then we will go on to C1, required approvals.
I would like to motion that we approve required approvals.
I second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So carried. Superintendent informational items.
Just one update there about winter driving conditions. I imagine that you all get phone calls or questions from folks about why is school closed, why didn't we close, those kinds of things. Just a couple reminders that the decision has to happen quite early in the morning. Marion Shade, our Director of Transportation, Greg Foltz, others get up and drive the roads to determine whether or not they're safe. And some things are within our control. Can we delay it 90 minutes? Do we have custodial staff and maintenance staff that can come in and clear the parking lot? Are the sidewalks going to be good to go? We try to work on those things. What we can't control is how many plow drivers does the county have? Is the state focusing on the highways or the freeways? There are just some things beyond our control. And one of the other things you should be aware of is people reach out to you. You all know it can be very different in Moses Lake than it is in Othello, than it is in Pasco. So there is some coordination amongst the districts, particularly among the transportation directors. But I don't reach out to any other superintendents. I don't say, hey, what are you doing in Connell? What are you doing in Royal? We're not on the same roads at the same time. So again, just if you get pressure or questions from folks, you certainly send them my way and I can take the phone calls. But I wanted you to have some of those details about how that happens and when it happens. Okay. I'd also like to reserve a moment to share something about Mike, but are we going to do that at the end of the meeting, or when would you all like to have
Let's
that
get it over
conversation?
with.
Just get it over? All right. Well, I wrote down some notes. That way I could stay on point for myself. So Mike's been on the school board, I think, for 9 years. And he was appointed in December of 2013 and ran successful campaigns following that appointment. This year, I looked at it. We've had about 45 meetings this year. And so over 9 years, that would be just over 400 meetings.
Wow.
And if you estimate that each meeting is about 2 hours, and we know some are longer than that for sure, but if we were conservative, that's over 800 hours of work that Mike has given to the students in our community. And that's a lot of time away from his family and away from his business and away from his own interests. And when I think about Mike, I wanted to think about a few words to share. Four came to mind. One was around his faith, his family, this community, and his commitment to service. So when I think about faith, Mike has a deep faith that informs his decision making. And that faith is core to his identity. He's prayerful and gracious. He looks to include others with an eye on what is best for those involved. A focused eye and a thoughtful approach have allowed him to lead during some very challenging times that would test anyone's faith. And Mike's been steadfast in that. A family. Eva couldn't be with us today. And Mike and I talked about that briefly before the meeting. But leadership can be a lonely position. And if you try to do it by yourself, you won't last long. And Mike's family is incredibly important to him. Board members and the board president are often the last line of appeal, and they get the questions nobody else wants to answer. And those hours spent in meetings are just part of the role. Certainly the time required to process all of the information and respond to phone calls and inquiries from the community takes time away from the family. And I know that Mike hasn't been in this alone, and I wanted to acknowledge his family, particularly Eva, for supporting him in his work on the board. Mike often talks about his kids and grandkids when responding to district initiatives or ideas. And it's been great to have a board member who consistently says, "Would I want that for my kid?" It's an important perspective that Mike always keeps in mind. Around community, like many of us, Mike's formative years were spent here in Othello, and he's committed to this community. I know his new appointment as a county commissioner is consistent with that. And as I was describing Mike's faith during challenging times, I was reminded of the difficulties we all encountered during the past couple of years. There was a lot of anger, accusation, and at times awfulness around every corner. Mike remained steadfast in his commitment to the community, and most importantly to our students. He always kept students first. People like Mike are the past, present, and future of this community. His commitment to ensuring that the next generation is well prepared should be commended. And finally, service. Mike believes that we are all significant, and when I talk about we, that's all of us. He believes that God has made each of us to be significant, so we must serve well. So I want to thank Mike and his family for serving us so well.
Mike, you said you had something to say. Did you want to say it at this time, or you want to still reserve it?
I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but that wouldn't be like me. I told Sharon I wasn't going to cry, so I'll try not to.
Oh, Mike, you promised.
My wife's in the hospital right now. I didn't get very much sleep last night, but I was thinking about today. You know, after 9 years of doing this, this is the last time, and I reflected on a lot of things. I honestly, I read a book once that says, "What on earth am I here for?" And I'm here to serve. And when I read that book, I took it to heart, and it'll be with me till the day I die. Because if I can't serve others, why am I here? A true measure of success is, you know, if the organization you're leaving is in a better place than when you got here. And without a doubt, OSD is better than when Mike Garza got here. And it's not because of Mike Garza. It's because of every single employee we've had. It's because of the grit and determination of the boards, prior boards, and the willingness to do whatever we have to do to ensure that our kids get the best opportunities in life. Very proud of having been a part of this board for the last 9 years. Very difficult years because of the pandemic. I've heard that it's a thankless job. I disagree with that, because when you hear the successes that have come out of OSD, that makes it all worthwhile. You have heard me on several occasions tell our educators that their jobs is not a job, it's a calling. They've become sometimes more valuable than parents to our students. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I'm just appreciative of everybody in this room now, whoever in the community is listening to this or will listen to this. Thank you for the trust that you placed in me, to election cycles. I hope that I represented you well. To my board members and to the leaders that are here today, we're not done. In the midst of still some obstacles in the education industry, I am very confident in the leadership of this district that we will continue to succeed. I am very proud of the achievements that we've made so far. You all are to be commended for it. I'm not going anywhere. It's just I'll be different type of service to our entire county moving forward at the beginning of the year. I would be totally remiss if I don't acknowledge my wife. Today she's like, "I'm going to be here when you get back. Go do what you got to do. They're not going to release me anyway by noon, so just go do it." She's always been there. Has she complained? A lot. But at the end of the day, I'll never forget this last time that I ran. It was like, are you going to file? I'm like, nah, babe, if you're not 100% on board, I said, I'm not going to do this. This is Monday. Thursday night, I still hadn't filed. I had to do it by Friday. She's like, why haven't you filed? I said, because I haven't heard you say that you're 100% on board. And she says, I'm 110% on board because that's where your heart is. She says, and I'm not going to stop you from that. So, hon, I don't know if you're listening. I hope not. But if you someday hear this, thank you very much. I love you with everything I got, and thank you for allowing me to do the things that I do. I couldn't do them without you. I've heard that behind a great man is a great woman. That is totally false. She is by my side because she is better at a lot of things than I am. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I-
you.
I was just gonna say some things too, if we have
No,
time.
go ahead.
Do you want
Go
to? Okay. I appreciate, Mike, that you have views like I do, that every student and every person is a child of God, and that you always have that. Sorry, at least I didn't cry for you, but you've always had that focus, and I didn't have to worry about standing up for that because I knew I could stand beside you with that. That we have not agreed often, but that you've been able to stand up to me to say what you feel like, and that we can understand and see each other's perspectives. I've loved that you've always been able to do that, and I've always appreciated that. That it's always been respectful, that we honor each other, that we still respect each other afterwards and can still work together, and that's never been a problem, that we just leave the disagreement and walk away from that, and we are always, it's about moving forward to the best way that we can. And I've always known that I didn't have to worry about that part with you. It wasn't about fighting for control or any of those things. It was about what's the best for our kids. Thank you.
So my emotional partner is leaving, and I'm truly going to miss him. I use the chain of command more often than I probably needed to because I always contact him, so I wouldn't bother you, Pete, all the time. And he was always a person that will sit down and go through everything with you. We looked at every fact, and I left and always felt so much better because I learned a lot. He's had the experience I didn't have, and I've actually trusted all of you. Not just him, but it's nice to have someone to lean on when you're just do not know. I'm not going to cry now because I'm going to hang up here, but I think Mike knows how much I appreciate him and how I back him, and I wish him the very best in his next endeavor because he's going to do great things for us. Thanks, Mike.
Wait, Lindsay, don't speak. I've known Mike a lot longer than I think he remembers because even Michaela were my favorite babysitters. And I think that just with my time on the board with him has been really great. And I mean, we don't talk a lot, but it's just everything that comes through WASDA also gets sent to Mike for me. And so just knowing that there's always someone from my own board that's getting all the information that I am is extremely helpful, and I really appreciate your Christianity and your positivity towards what's best for the students.
I can't say that you and I would have crossed paths much in life, Mike, if it wasn't for school board. And so for that reason, I will always be grateful that I've served on the board, that it has intertwined our lives in such that I will consider you a friend for my life. Several times during COVID, I remember you calling me, "Hey, Linz, you got a minute?" And just the way that you would address me, it never felt like you were the senior board member and I was the rookie freshman that didn't know what she was doing. You've always treated me with respect and with kindness and dignity, and I have always admired your courage to talk about your faith, because while I share it, I sometimes lack the courage to speak it the way that you do. And so you've been a great example in that to me, in putting that in your language in everything that we talk about. And so you've taught me things, not just in the board and in your leadership role in leading us as a whole through COVID and through the last 4 years, but also you've taught me things on a personal level that I will always cherish and always hold near and dear to my heart. So thank you for being a friend and for being the board president and for all the things that entails. And thank you for the lessons and the mentorship that you have given to me. I will always appreciate it. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Mike, I really appreciate your leadership and the leadership that you have shown us. I know I've had many visits in your office, sitting talking to you, even when we would have something come up, pressing or something like that. And I would come to you for advice and guidance on things. And I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to do that. I'll be at your office every once in a while. I appreciate your time that you have served. You've led us through some difficult times with the transition and appointment of a new superintendent, which we really appreciate. And you led us through the COVID years and the demonstrations we had out here and all the issues and through all the Zoom meetings. And we come out on top. We come out great, and we're doing great. That's with your leadership and the guidance of the district staff, and we really, really appreciate your time on the board. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, thank you all.
Okay, with that, we will go to D1, mid-year report.
All right, well, I'll invite the team forward, and while they're coming up to take their seats to share the content with you all today. This time of year, and I think today's meeting in particular, are opportunities for reflection, right? As we think about Mike's service to the board and Elise's service to the board and transition for some of you to different positions on the board. What doesn't change is there are students in classrooms. There are students in classrooms today. They'll be there tomorrow. And there are teachers and staff working really hard to make sure they learn all they can. So it's important that we take checks along the way to see how things are going. And part of that is the opportunity to share with you the work of the system. Now, the superintendent evaluation, as I've come to learn about it over the last couple of years now, I see it in really three chunks. One is my own individual performance and how you all assess and evaluate that. And oftentimes that occurs in individual conversations or in executive session when you're considering performance of an employee, like you're evaluating Pete and how he does his work. There are two other important components around, I think, complete superintendent evaluation. One is how are the leaders in the system doing and what are they doing at their sites? And then ultimately, how are the students doing? And so I hope that you always consider those three components when evaluating the performance of the system. So today is going to be about that middle chunk. What are our leaders doing? What's happening at the school sites? And so we've invited some of them here today to share the important work around what's happening in the system. And I'm going to step in for Justin, who couldn't be with us here today, and share a piece at the end. But you're going to hear a lot from them. And certainly they're here today, and we're welcome to take questions at the end. But I know typically with policy governance, it was a report and then conversation at the next meeting. But however you want to run it at the end, Ken, if you do want to take some questions or have more dialogue, we're certainly open to that. But we expect it'll be 20 or 25 minutes of content, okay? This idea about nested goals isn't new to us. We shared this image with you last year. Certainly this piece on the top around a graduate profile and OSD benchmarks, that's work that's on hold as we prepare for and get through the strategic planning process. You'll hear some of the building goals that have been identified and established. The superintendent goals, I'm going to show a slight edit to those that have been in board docs for over a year and a half now that I think we need to talk about, and how these all should fit together and be nested together. You heard at opening day, those of you who were able to attend, us talk about these three priorities in the school district: high quality feedback, professional learning communities, and our ELL students. And that all centered around this sense of belonging and being part of something. And what you're going to hear about today are the work that these folks are leading related to those three particular concepts. For me, if you'll remember, just over a year ago when I shared with you, I had 3 individual goals about a seamless transition and about being in schools and whatnot. Really locking in and figuring out that idea about building support and coherence coming from being a presence in school. So Marisa and I continue to evaluate my calendar. We continue to look for 8 to 12 hours every week in schools, and we're doing a pretty good job of maintaining that 25% threshold. Last year we discovered, because we had bumped it to 40, it wasn't good for us and it wasn't good for them. So we all agreed that in our system, probably 25% of the time makes sense. And then at the bottom there, I hope you hear this theme throughout the presentation, and that's that there's not a lot of change here. Not a lot of shifting of where we're headed and what we're doing. It's really about getting better at it and getting more clarity around the work that we're doing so that we get student achievement. Not change for the sake of change, but for the sake of our students and their outcomes. These are the 3 goals that have been on the board docs agenda for over a year now. And so what I shared them in this way because you're going to see the edited version where 3 goes away, which is around facility planning, until we get through the levy and then decide where we head next with that committee and future facility needs. But I think it is important that we set some goals and establish some ideas around the strategic planning. So you're going to see that present itself. It just takes the place of that. So in 1 and 2, just a change in year. Hey, we're going to continue to think about PLCs, and we're going to continue to think about accountability, and we're going to do that by thinking about how our students are doing, how they're performing. For this year in particular, a focus on our structures and systems in supporting multi-language learners, and then how feedback that we give and receive influences that work. So you'll notice that change, and we'll get a hard copy of this document for you as well so that you can look at it over the break as we have some time between now and the next meeting. I was part of a project this last year, and one of my favorite statements that came from the project was this idea about managerial chases you and you have to chase instructional leadership. Problems will come find you in your office as a building leader or a director. If you want to work on managerial things, you can fill your day with that. If you want to be an instructional leader, you have to go after it. You have to chase it. You have to put systems and structures in place that allow you to do that. And so these folks are here to tell you about how they're chasing that. And a couple of them are going to take a particular area. So you're going to hear from individuals around just one area, and then we'll move on to the next. So that'll be the context or the frame for the presentation. And I think we're going to start with David Spencer.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to share. We've got some exciting work that's been going on here in our district with around our English learners. And Pete mentioned multilingual learners, and that is the parlance that the state is moving to. Actually, nationwide is going away from EL or ELL to ML, because the reality is we're all language learners. No matter what language we speak, we're all learning language. So we started this year a district EL or ML steering committee. It's been a while since we've examined our programs inside of our bilingual program, and it was just time to refocus on that, especially coming off of the COVID years. Our language learners, in their English development, they were the hardest hit. They just didn't get the opportunity to practice their language and develop their language when they were online. Teachers tried as hard as they could, but that was statewide that they saw that. So we put together, we have at least 4 representatives from each school that were invited to come to be part of this committee. This is going to be a multi-year process where we look at our current systems and redesign what ML education looks like in Othello, with the end goal of having students, when they enter program, exit within 5 years. So meet proficiency on the WIDA standards. So we have been working on this year, and we're developing a professional learning plan around ML education and how we're going to roll that out to the teachers. What do they need to have in their classroom? Because the reality is, of teaching in Othello, we're all language teachers. I may not have gone to school to be a language specialist, but I have ML students in my room, and I'm teaching them language every day. So what skills and tools do they need to make them feel like they can accomplish that and be successful? Obviously, the WIDA is the test that the state uses to measure language progress. We looked at that data from last year. It was the first year across the state that it was given, and the schools all looked at our data and said, you know what? We see our biggest bang for the buck being around, let's focus on expressive data. Let's get our students talking more in class and writing more in class. So as a team, we made that decision, and that's where we have been focusing our learning this year, is around helping our students better engage in having conversations in classes, academic conversations, and then translating those conversations into writing. And to kind of note what's happening at the building level, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Perez.
Can I ask really quick, what does ML stand for? Sorry.
Sorry, multilingual learners.
Thank you.
All right, so at all of our buildings, not just at Lutakaga, from the district level work that David spoke about, we have a rollout process at our buildings. One of the big changes is learning about the new assessment, WIDA, and how it differs from previous language assessments for our students. It's really important that we give our teachers experiences to view the assessment, view student work, what should it look like, what should it sound like, and there's a much stronger focus on what type of output, like David said, in speaking and in writing do students need to be able to produce to show language proficiency. So all of us are dedicating time at some staff meetings to take what we've learned at the district level training to roll it out to our teachers and our teams. This year, we're trying to get a broad picture of what are the big changes. It can be overwhelming to feel like I'm trying to just teach in my classroom and now you're adding another layer. We're working hard to show how it's not another layer, but it's a layer that we need to think about how students show what they know. And so, like I said, this year we're putting those examples in front of our teachers, having them have experiences around what the changes are so that they can better understand what their students are going to experience on that assessment. In the elementary level, it is coming up here fairly quickly in February and March. So we're trying to put enough information so that at least teachers and students are not caught off guard, but we know we will continue, like David said, continue this process of learning and really changing our instruction throughout the next several years to support our multilingual learners. Of course, you know, I'm the very proud principal of Lutakaga Elementary, where we have our dual language focus, our dual language school for the district. We take students from all population areas, and we know the state superintendent is also very supportive of dual language programs. And so it would not be a surprise to you that we also at Lutakaga are working on that proficiency in both English and Spanish. We're ensuring that students get reading and writing in both languages on a daily basis. We consider data using the STAMP assessment, which is our Spanish version of the WIDA, and we're looking to see if that's holding the same rigor level of the WIDA, or should we adjust based on what we're learning. And we're working to connect with other dual language schools around our state, so considering dual language conferences so we can connect across Washington, because there's several other districts working in the same type of work that we are. The last arrow here talks about focusing on using language domains. I want to clarify that a little bit for you guys and letting you know that's thinking about how are students listening, speaking, reading, and writing about what they know. And at our school, we've also added this year about metacognition. How do they use listening, speaking, reading, and writing to think, to share their knowledge? It all comes together when we put together things we've seen, things we've heard, things we've talked about. We have so much more clarity and understanding about what we've learned. And so we wanted to highlight some of those pieces for you. Will's going to talk a little bit more about what does multilingual learner support look like at Hiawatha.
Thank you. So some stuff that's very similar from what you just saw at Lutakaga. I am really passionate about ELL. As many of you know, I entered education as an ELL teacher at Othello High School, and some of the great work we did there. And my framework for ELL as a leader and as a teacher has always been how can we unlock the potential that's there and help everybody else see. Because when you work with our English language learners, they're some of the most incredible students, but sometimes we have these kind of expectations and presuppositions as to what it means for those students and what they're able to accomplish. When really, I think they bring some of the biggest work ethic, They're problem solvers. They're just incredible kids that oftentimes have overcome incredible obstacles in their lives. And so I always said at OHS, and I say it now to my staff, like students aren't just kids that we can maybe eke out a pass, but they can be some of our highest flying students. They can be some of our students that contribute more than any other student to our community and in the future. So that's really the perspective we take. So similar to Jen, we've been really working on understanding the WIDA assessment, the new assessment, what is required of our students there. So as David stated, that we can reach our goals to exiting all of those students within 5 years. So that language no longer becomes a barrier to them in unlocking their education and unlocking their potential. One of the things that we're focusing on and will continue to focus on throughout the spring at Hiawatha is classroom-based support and really looking at the model for our teacher, our designated EL teacher. So as David said, really those students, if they're gonna access language and develop their language, it's gonna be within the classroom. It's gonna be working there. So we've had some success there already, and we just wanna continue to amplify that, where that teacher supports more in the classroom in providing strategies and opportunities and helping design instruction for our students that they can access throughout the day, rather than just a brief chunk, though that's important. It can't be the only access they get to language development. So they've developed units throughout the year in some grade levels, and we just want to continue to amplify that work. And then one of the big things that I am just really proud of in our school, Jen talked about her school being a dual language school and being able to value both of those languages. And that's one of the tragedies, I think, that happens in some of our schools, whether it's just a community culture, is that we have some languages that are devalued. Yes, we need them to learn English. Yes, we need them to develop that English language, because it's going to be a key to their success in the community and the nation we live in. But we want to acknowledge and value those languages that they bring. And I say languages because we often think of Spanish. We have our native speakers that speak Mixteco. We have an increasing Hmong population that's coming from Guatemala. and Quiche as well. So we've got some of these other languages. And if Spanish has been devalued in the past, some of these other languages have been even more devalued. And our teacher, our EL teacher, Nikki Wilkins, has done an incredible job of bringing that out, helping students speak that language, helping honor those languages and asking them questions, to the point where we have some students who have friends that are like, oh, I want to learn Mixteco, and they're like working together to try to learn new languages and speak Mixteco. I have a student that every time I pass him in the hall, he calls me Rakuchar, which I've learned is boss in Mixteco. So he tells me that. So this is a language that within 2 years, these students, we would ask them if they spoke Mixteco, and they would lie and say no. They didn't want to acknowledge that language heritage that they have, and now it's become something that they're proud of. And that's really important for all of our families to recognize that what you bring to the table is really valued. And despite, it's an additive perspective. We're going to add to that. We're going to unlock some doors for you with the English language development, but we want you to continue developing those other languages and using them as a resource and something that can propel you in the future. So that's the work we're doing at Hiawatha.
A couple questions before you pass the mic. ELD stands for?
English language development.
Okay, and GLAD?
That one, yeah. Guided language acquisition
language
design.
Okay,
I didn't know that.
gotcha.
I knew you were going to ask me one that I didn't know, but yeah.
Thank
so
you.
That's
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a training, a really common training around ELD, just in how to develop units and lessons that meet the needs of our multilingual learners.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so we'll be transitioning now to a second priority or initiative with professional learning communities. So just as Peter talked about in the beginning or introduction, PLCs is nothing new in education, and it's certainly not new in our district. But this year there's really been a focus on defining what professional learning communities looks like here in Othello, and both widening our perspective, but also narrowing. So widening in the sense of that it's more than a Monday late start, that it's more than those 90 minutes, as appreciative of we are of that time, that it's also how we work with one another in our data meetings, how we work with one another before or after school, how we collaborate and plan as a whole. And narrowing to say, and what should the focus be on? What are our priorities? What are the students telling us through the data? And so that's been the work this year around professional learning communities. So starting with professional development, both in the summer, but also with our principal admin teams, it's been an ongoing conversation. And through that work, through book studies and learning together and sharing ideas, creating the characteristics of an exemplar PLC. And then looking at structural changes, so removing the titles of like teacher, building, and district days, which made it sound like it was separate work. You know, like the teachers are doing this work, but the admin wants to do this work, but really bringing it together and saying it's all of our work. And can we support one another in that work? And so removing those titles and then being able to really create a stronger teacher and admin partnership has been a goal and a focus this year. And then looking at being intentional around what is our plan. So looking at each of our sites and our buildings, what are those, the work that we need to focus on for the next 6 weeks, for the next 6 months, for the next couple of years. And so you're gonna have an opportunity to hear about 3-year plans that are happening at the high school level with Kat and Josh. And I just wanna call out, I hope that you hear how much of a partnership that they have in this work and sharing resources and ideas, which is also exciting.
So at the high school, Josh and I and the rest of the OHS admin team, before school had started, when we had done our retreat before school started and heard about the priorities, Josh and I had, and the rest of the team had said, let's partner together in this work, because we had started the work last year with blueprints, and as we dived into PLC work, we initially had rotated it so that teachers would learn about EL, PLC, and had a cycle, and then teachers would release and learn about or figure out a way to implement it within the blueprints that they had started last year. But as we dived more and more into the work, because our focus was going to be common assessments, there were some things that we still needed to talk about around the blueprints. And so part of that was we had to kind of do a little pause and go, we need to really analyze our blueprints that were started last year. And so we had started a 3-year plan, and our focus this year is going to be what are we teaching, and having staff in the departments and all of our content areas really looking at their priority standards and really breaking down what those priority standards are, and going through and coming up with their team what our learning intentions and success criteria are. They've also been exposed to state assessments and reminding them this is what our 10th graders face. And so enlightening teachers around the experiences our kids have so that we know what our kids are facing and how do we remove the barriers so that kids can be successful. Another piece that helped staff start, because as Josh and I and the rest of the team kind of pushed and saying this is what's needed for common assessments, I know sometimes people are more visual and they need to like see the vision. And through Principal PLC, I had saw what Wahidas was doing. And so I took a team and I'm like, let's watch their data cycle, because this is what we're ultimately going to get to. And that helped my staff see, I see where you were going with that. I see why that's important. But what we need to do now is we need to take it back to the building and go, how does it work for OHS? How do we make it work? Because it's an elementary and we're secondary. And we're going through those motions of how do we move forward and make it OHS. And then we've also been expanding on teams and teachers that are going to standards-based. So a lot of our CTE teachers are now working together to figure out their standards-based grading component, as well as our world language department, and our many of our English teachers are also practicing and using standards-based grading through the use of their blueprints.
Thanks, Kat. You'll hear a lot of similarities within our plans, but I as usual, anytime there's an initiative that's coming our way, Desert Oasis High School has to look at it through a different lens. We have to modify and make adjustments due to our size and our singletons that teach specific areas. So there's been a lot of reflecting through this entire process. So I'll kind of talk to you guys a little bit about the collaboration between DOHS and OHS. First of all, it's been a first-class collaboration. I've really enjoyed both the new and veteran administrators at the high school, and the collaboration is to present a united front. at the high school level. And I think it goes a long ways, and it really has. Our 3-year plan, similar to CAT and the high schools, is a little bit different. We also did the blueprints, but what we found in the last few weeks is that we had to kind of reflect and go back and look at, okay, so how are we doing things? We've had to differentiate the way we were doing things. So we're looking at our instructional strategies that we're using specifically. Is our instruction the best it can possibly be for our students? Is it preparing students for the high school and beyond? We all know that not every student goes to college, but still, beyond, there's life beyond the high school. So we looked at how is our instruction tied to standards, and what we found out is that in many cases, we kind of use a shotgun approach where we're shooting lessons out there, and we're hitting standards, we kind of know it, but we really are not being as intentional as we can be. So this year has been a transition year for us as administrators as well as our teachers, and working collaboratively with our staff to figure out, okay, what are the power standards going to be? Well, if you teach in a content like a state assessed content like math or English or science, then we can look at the assessment. Perhaps we can look at the state standards at that level. But when you don't have a state assessment, then it's up to the teacher to identify what are the most important power standards that we can identify. From there, we looked at, or we're in this process, so don't think that we've got this all figured out. This is a work in progress. That's why it's a 3-year plan. And the biggest thing for us in the 3-year plan is that I'm focusing on 3 content areas at Desert Oasis High School, which is our math, our ELA, and our science. And why those areas is because there's a state assessment attached to them. Those are our priority areas. I do have staff members that want to jump on this 3-year plan much sooner, and we definitely promote that. But in no way, shape, or form is this a teacher only problem. No, this is work that we're doing collaboratively. So I'm drawing on the resources of like a Paul Oursland to help us with science. I'm drawing on Denise Colley to help me with the social studies, and David Spencer. We're using our OSSI coach, Ann Gallagher, to help me along this pathway, because this is not a one-person job. So once we have identified our power standards, then we'll be able to move towards the next step. And I have an 8-step progression that we've shared with my staff members that is a little different than the high school. Again, because of our size, sometimes we can move quicker in some areas, and sometimes we have to slow down and maybe add some more detail to our plan. We'll get to the point where we'll have success criteria by the end of this year in each of these areas, and we'll, after we have identified these power standards, we'll also be able to show how these areas are going to be assessed. Again, it's not about assessing the task, it's about assessing the I guess the standard. It's what level do our kids understand the standard, and then do we move on or do we go back and reteach? So again, this may seem common sense to elementaries, and it is, but for my school, it's a work that we want to tackle. It's a big job, and we want to get to the point where we can really bring some intentionality to everything we do, because we got great teachers in our building, and all we're doing is refining instruction so it can be the best that it can be for our students to get them prepared for the next level. Pilot standards based on grading, starting with math. We have talked about and we have piloted standards-based grading. I think if we follow this plan the way we intended, we will get to a point where a lot of the work that we're doing in all content areas will be standards-based grading, which will make life much easier for not only students, but I think for parents to understand how their kids are being assessed, as well as our teachers as well.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So power standards, I haven't seen that term before, like state standards, and then there's the tests that I know they don't always align what they want you to know. So what would be your definition of power standards?
So my definition, because I want to make sure that everybody understands. So like, for example, if we take one content area, let's say science, and you look at how many standards are identified on OSPI, there could be 30 to 40 standards. Okay, well, we don't expect our teachers to be able to teach every single standard in a 12-week period of time, but what we do expect is for our teachers to be able to break down, okay, what are the most important ones that kids need to know, whether it's from 9th grade to 10th, 10th to 11th, or whether it's from earth science to biology 1, biology 2, chemistry. So again, there's a progression. Our teachers are the experts in that area, but working collaboratively, whether it be with other OHS teachers in their own content area, or whether it's online through looking at scope and sequences from other schools, highly effective schools that have identified power standards. Those are, I guess I'll use this term, the biggest bang for your buck, where we know that if we're hitting those standards, our kids are more likely to be successful. It could be a state assessment, but it could also be at the next level to prepare them for the next class or even beyond.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the last priority we're going to talk about is feedback. And feedback, I think, is a hard priority for a few different reasons. One is that it can mean different things to different people, and it definitely means different things in our system. Feedback is the data and the classroom work that students do to let teachers know how they're doing. When we, as a system, come to you and we show you all the numbers about what's going on in the district, that's feedback. It's also about the way that we perform. It's also about the relationships that we have and how we interact with each other. And so there's that aspect of feedback as well. This is a hard priority because feedback can be difficult to hear. It's hard to not be defensive. It's hard to realize that when we give each other feedback that it's coming from a place of we want to improve our system. And I think it's also it's easy to forget that it's multi-directional. It's not just about principals giving teachers feedback about what's happening in a classroom. It's also about teachers giving principals feedback. It's not just about teachers giving students feedback with grades or other things about what they're doing in the classroom. Teachers need to listen to their students and take that feedback the other way. Just like the district needs to listen to the community and the parents. And we hope that parents in the community will listen to us as well as we talk about what's happening with their students. And so even though it's a hard priority, it is really critical to us being able to improve the system and make sure that we're doing the absolute best that we can for our students. And so as leaders, we've been talking about feedback a lot. In our meetings, which I consider the admin meetings that we have, it's a type of PLC, it's a professional learning community where we're improving ourselves so that we can support the buildings and support the students. I think one of the things that's hard about this is that we need to be able to model as leaders the humility that it takes to make changes based off of the feedback that we get. If the data says we need to change something, we need to do it. If we get feedback about how something we did or something we said isn't quite right, let's make those changes and move on because it's what's going to be best for our system. And so we're going to hear about a couple different types of that feedback. Definitely how administrators are giving teachers feedback in classrooms, and there's a lot of different ways that that's happening this year. We have data meetings that are happening that says K-8, but I also know that it's starting to happen more at the 9-12 level as well. And then the feedback that we're getting from the community. Parents at conferences completed the CEE survey, which is the Center for Educational Effectiveness. And we're going to be giving that same survey to both students and teachers later on this school year as well. We're not just giving these surveys to give them. We're taking that feedback, thinking about it, and taking action. And so I'll let Deborah talk about the work that's happening at Scrutiny with feedback.
So one of the pieces of feedback that we really wanted to shift this year was our coaching conversations, those conversations that we're having with teachers around what we gather from our walkthroughs and when we come into the classrooms. And we are really excited about our conversations this year. They are one-to-one, they're face-to-face, they're collaborative. We're sitting down with teachers every other week approximately. Some teachers we're meeting with them more frequently. But we're sitting down and we're collaborating together on their goals or their area of focus. So based on my observation in the classroom, I'm noticing this. How can what are some goals you have around that? What are some ways we can improve? What are some strategies that you know, or here's something that maybe you could try? And we identify some very concrete next steps for that teacher to put in place during that conversation. It's all recorded. And then I say, okay, so when will I be able to come in and see this in your classroom? So next week when I come around, like what time would be a good time for me to see this? So we set a time for me to come in and to observe and to give additional feedback on, you did a really great job implementing that, tweak this. Or I noticed that you weren't really having very good results. Why do you think that is? So we can then problem solve and identify the next steps. And what we really have taken from that is that we see the impact on teacher practice. We see the improvement on teacher planning because we are working with several teachers on their lesson plans, their daily plans, their weekly plans. What does that look like? How do you write a really good lesson objective or success criteria? So we're seeing the change in practice, in planning, in the instructional strategies that they're using, in student engagement in the classroom, in behavior management. You know, we're able to see that impact in almost real time, pretty quickly. And as we're able to provide that feedback and that reinforcement to the teachers, it helps build and solidify that practice. We're really excited to have those two-way collaborative conversations with those teachers. And then the other type of feedback, or another type of feedback that Jessica mentioned, was the feedback that we're getting from students. Data meetings are not new to us this year. We put them in place last year. But what's new this year is that our data meetings are taking on a life of their own, that they are gaining so much momentum. The teachers are leading those data meetings. We're really working on creating that teacher efficacy, that these are their meetings, they own them. Grade chairs are leading the meetings with admin support now. It's no longer the admin leading those meetings. And they're really excited about them. And they're excited to get in there and to dig into the data and to talk about what do their kids know and what do their kids not know yet, and what's causing that gap. And so what are we going to do differently? What are those instructional pieces that we need to make sure that we're shoring up so that they do get it this next time around and this next reteach? We are really excited to see that our large data meetings are sliding into weekly data meetings. So in our large data meetings 3 times a year, we give an interim, we come through, we talk about math. But now we're identifying the standard that we want to reteach. We're planning out a week of reteach, and then what's that exit ticket going to be at the end of that week? The teachers give that exit ticket, and then in their PLC, they look at that exit ticket and say, okay, what's our gap look like now? Where are they now? What's our next step? What do we need to do this week for instruction based on what the kids told us they knew last week? And transitioning from these 3 times a year data meetings into feet on the ground, week to week, adjusting instruction based on what the kids are telling us they need or what they've learned or what they haven't learned yet. So we're really excited to see how much momentum they're gaining, how much ownership the teachers are taking in the process, and how exciting it is to be working and collaborating with our teachers on making sure that we know each step of the way, what do our kids know and what do they need to know next.
All right, thank you. I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the work at Wahidas as it relates to feedback. Really 4 components that Principal Johnson shared with us. One was around classroom walks, the number of times that they're in classrooms providing feedback to teachers, and those leading to coaching conversations, not unlike what Deborah just described. They've also launched something this year called Hawk Walks, and you could imagine that as a group of teachers walking in together with their administrators to observe other teachers in action. And those are prepared for by having the teachers that are being observed identify a particular technique or strategy that they want some feedback on. So a really nuanced way to think about feedback from your peers and from your administrator. Aggressive monitoring might be a term you've heard before, and that's really thinking about specific actions or activities you want to see from students, and that teachers have a rubric or a scale in front of them where they're in observing and watching and paying attention to how kids are doing. And the last, I think this is probably an appropriate place to end this presentation around student data. And so what are the kids telling us about what they're learning or not learning? What's working and not working? And that question at the end, is learning taking place? That's what we need to ask ourselves. And so at the start of this, when I said it's about how's the superintendent doing, how are the leaders doing pressing on the system, and then how are the kids doing? If we take a step back and we think about, do we have enough kids at standard? The answer is no. There are significant gaps that have existed in our system for a number of years. COVID didn't help any of that, but we need to acknowledge that. Are there pockets of excellence? Absolutely. But are there enough kids learning enough content to prepare them to go to GCU, whether it's in Phoenix or Washington? We don't know. Well, we do know there aren't. And there are particular groups of students that are struggling the most. And there are some high leverage activities that people like this are thinking about. So I want to share a couple of things about them. And I wouldn't know this until what just happened. And here's some notes I took. The level of confidence and comfort and coherence that I heard from them, that doesn't happen if you're not authentic in sharing what's really occurring at your sites. I didn't see a bunch of notes up there. I didn't see a bunch of people looking down at to remember I need to say this. I saw a group of committed people over here sharing their work. Here's what we do at our site. Here's what's important to us. Really impressive what they just shared with you. So I really appreciate that. The other piece is around coherence and being careful about changing too much, which I think is going to be really important as we consider strategic planning. Because what I heard from David around, other than multilingual being a new way to describe a particular student group, was more focus, not something new. What I heard from Jen, she used this specific phrase, not another layer. It's not new stuff. What I heard from Will was his belief and view of the work as a principal being the same as how he viewed it as a teacher. Nothing new there. And then Will also said something really interesting that you heard at the last board meeting that Jose Alonso shared, I think, really clearly, and I commented on then. It's that this idea that we add to who our students are, no matter who they are. We don't take something as important as their language away from them. Your language is your identity. It's your culture. And so I appreciated hearing that from Will and the connection to the work happening at Ludokaga. From John, he said this phrase, PLC is not new in our district. That was the truest statement that was shared today. It's been around for a long time. Are we getting the outcomes that we need? Are we getting the outcomes that our teachers need, the supports that they need? I heard from Kat this idea about 3-year plans. Okay, we've got some stuff started where we have our own principal PLC. We're going to establish something, understanding that to move a comprehensive high school is very, very difficult, but we've got a 3-year plan to address that. From Josh, I heard, I don't know if you can hear a smile, but that idea about having someone to collaborate with, not only because he's by himself at DOHS, but there has been some conflict between Desert Oasis and Othello High School for a number of years, for a number of reasons. Those two sitting together and collaborating and discussing their work, it doesn't just happen here. It happens almost every day. Really exciting partnership developing between those folks. Deb talking about identifying goals and next steps. Here's some specific things we're going to do, not a bunch of new stuff. But we're going to talk about your goals. I'm going to come in and watch. You're going to tell me a day that I'm going to be there. And we're actually going to do it. We're not just going to talk about it. And then lastly, from Jessica, she talked about this idea that feedback can be hard to hear. What these people, I think, will acknowledge, it's also hard to say. It can be difficult to go into a classroom or to evaluate. You're evaluating our performance and my performance. It's hard to say things to people, especially if you don't have a deep understanding of it. And what I'm excited about are the activities that Jessica has organized for us to learn more about these 3 particular ideas, about PLCs, about ELL, and about feedback. And the more that we learn, and the more that our teachers and staff learn, the more that our kids will learn. That will absolutely happen. So what we have to do is demonstrate, I don't want to use the word grit. We have to demonstrate the ability to think about it and learn about it, and then actually put it into action, actually have it make a difference for students. And that's the piece that's missing. That's the piece that's missing, that we have a significant number of students across the system at scale making movement. We have pockets, and we're going to figure out why those pockets are working, and then think about how do we make that happen everywhere else. So really appreciate these guys for coming in and sharing the way that you did. And I think as a superintendent, what I've learned over the last year and a half is there were times where I'm afraid about who's going to grab the mic. Either if they're from the community or one of you or one of them, sometimes myself. But I felt so comfortable listening to them share authentically about what they're doing, about their work, and about how we're trying to support that. So thank you for that. I also think you should acknowledge the board, because 2 years ago, maybe even a year and a half ago, there was tension here as well. I don't sense that. And it's so comforting to know that we're all here with the same desire, which is to help more students learn more stuff. And so we appreciate the chance to share all of that with you today.
Well, at this time, we'll entertain any questions or comments.
It's a comment, and if this is the last thing you guys hear from Mike Garza as a school board member, I'll be okay with it. I hope I don't forget anybody. Thank you to everyone who is here. I put down Carlos and his staff, Marion, Greg, the guys that are clearing the snow, Jenny, the SROs, the security people at OHS, Tim, Taff, the new departments he's got, IT, Heidi, who's with us over here, Jen, the executive team. I like Pete. I appreciate the candor, and I've told you guys when you make your presentations that you guys aren't afraid to give us the real state of the state. You don't cover it up, because at the end of the day, it's there. People can find that out. But your willingness and your determination to make those things right, or to do whatever you have to make sure that these kids, these pockets that we've identified, get to where they need to be, you're to be commended for that. And I need to say thank you to Dr. Perez. This wasn't here 2 years ago. I'll never forget the word usurp was thrown at us from a principal about how we sometimes think they thought that we usurped their leadership abilities or what have you. I'll leave today with my head high, so at peace with what is going on at OSD 147. And Dr. Perez, I think a lot of it you have to do with. I've been emailed. I'll go as far as to say that there's a gentleman new to the district who said, Mr. Garza, you guys made absolutely the right choice. I'll stick by that. I leave the district in this capacity very proudly, but I have to thank each and every one of you. It's all about what you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Will you be uploading this into today's meeting? I know that the document is not there, and I think that this is, I mean, it's wonderful to hear everything, and I don't know if people actually ever back reference stuff, but it's great. This is an amazing report and process, and I do want to make sure that it is in there, that we could reference it.
We can upload it for this content, and then we can either include it in, well, I'll talk with Ken about where we should include it next time for my own evaluation, just as a reference for you all to have. But yeah, we'll put it in both agendas.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was a ton of work and effort, not just for today and in preparing for this meeting, but the hours of work that you're putting into place for the things that you told us about, like just hours and days and weeks of work and effort. And I appreciate that you're all good people, good parents. I saw Josh at a basketball game last night videoing his kid and just thought, like, we have good people in this district who really care and whose kids are engaged here and who, I don't know, Mike got to me with this emotional bug or something. I don't know, but I really appreciate you guys being so good. Good to the kids that aren't your kids, being good to my kids, being good to all the kids that we're trying to do the best for. Whether you have little ones or big ones or none at all in this system, you're so good. So I just thank you, not only to you guys, but also to Dr. Perez for really being the leader that this board needed really bad and that our system needed. And so I'm just very appreciative. So thank you. And thank you guys for all of your hard work and everything that you do.
I think the positivity that all of you bring to us is just so uplifting. Growing up here and going to elementary school through graduating, I thought we had a great education. And I never wanted to see it stop. And I see finally we're on a lift. And let's continue that. We all put effort we have, because we've got good leaders and we have great students. And we want to make sure that they all succeed. And no matter what they do. I don't say they have to go to college, but anything that they take the next step, we want to push them to feel really great. And you all make them really feel great. So thank you. I think I see it in the schools. I just keep saying it over. Is I see that bubbliness of the kids. It's so great to see that back, isn't it? So thank you anyway.
Could I just share one last thing, Ken, about, well, unless you were going to share something.
No, go ahead.
I think it's important to acknowledge that how fluid they were in sharing what they shared. They could also do it if I said to them, hey, you get 3 minutes and you need to share the things you're struggling with, the challenges. Because making it look easy or look like there's so much behind it, where there are tears and words and disagreements that go into that. And so I don't want to discount that. These people have very, very difficult jobs, as do our teachers. But you're right, Lindsay. You know, when George Worres used to say, people, we have good people, he was right on point. That's exactly right. And those are the kind of people you want to be in the trenches with when it does get hard, when the challenges do come.
And you mentioned that there is the challenges. But I think everybody here has recognized the challenges, and you are hitting them headstrong, going forward and challenging all those. And we really appreciate that. We've seen the effort, we've seen the progress, we've seen the great job that you guys have did. We really appreciate you being here today, and it's not too often we get in the same room all the time, and I really enjoy it, and I look for it more in the future. So thank you again. Okay, we will go to F1, to upcoming events. We've only got one listed there, and which is the winter break. Then we will go to board self-assessment. Assessment of the meeting.
What a great meeting.
Great meeting.
I think the agenda was wonderful. We captivated and we hit every point that we knew. So for the new year coming up, we can look forward to the new year of 2023.
Yeah.
The recognitions today.
Oh, yes.
They were lengthy, but they were needy.
Yep.
Definitely.
Appreciate that, for all the time and effort that everybody puts in. It's very much appreciated.
They will be a whole,
Yes.
losing both of them. Wonderful mid-year report to be able to have. The ego has left the room. I don't know how else to say that. That it's a whole. We see that it's a whole group effort. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Great student rep reports. I mean, they were amazing. Great new plans moving forward.
Yep.
Awesome stuff.
And looking forward for the cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's gonna be great.
Who's
Yes,
baking
we
those
are.
cookies?
Yes.
Pete, do you have anything for the meeting?
Perhaps just acknowledging the transition, which is, Mike sticking to the protocol and saying, "Hey, I'm moving seats. I'm sitting in a different chair," and then you can stepping in immediately and saying, "Here we go." So I've thought a lot about transitions over the last year and a half, and so I appreciate. I think we should acknowledge at this meeting that you both did that so smoothly. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And looking forward to new leadership with us as well. Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn this meeting. We are going to have a luncheon directly afterwards. We invite everybody that could stay for it, if you can. And during this, since all board members will still be here, there will be no business taken during the meeting, and then we will adjourn after that. Thank you.